All right, today we're going to dig into the origin story of the strategy games we all know and love. And I guarantee you it is not what you think. It's a story that starts way back in a 1960s classroom with an incredible teacher, a tech giant, and an idea that would change gaming forever.
So if I asked you where strategy games came from, you'd probably guess what? A Silicon Valley garage, some university computer lab? Well, the real story starts somewhere way more unexpected, and it begins long before anyone even had a personal computer. You have to picture the scene. It's the 1960s. Computers are these absolute behemoths, room-sized mainframes that only giant corporations could afford. Programming them meant learning really complex languages like FORTRAN, and they were used for serious stuff, definitely not for fun and games.
But right in the middle of all this serious high-tech computing, our story begins. And it doesn't start with an engineer or a programmer. It starts with an elementary school teacher who had a truly ambitious idea about how to teach history.
So this is Mabel Addis, a teacher from New York who was just completely fascinated by ancient Mesopotamia thanks to some recent archaeology work. And she had this brilliant idea. What if she could find a way to make that ancient history feel totally real and immediate for her students?
Now, she couldn't do this alone, right? She found the perfect partner in BOCES, which stands for the Board of Cooperative Educational Services. And these guys were already way ahead of the curve, exploring how simulations could be this powerful new tool for teaching.
And to actually build this thing, to make it run, they needed the big guns. And the 1960s, that meant one name, IBM. And so you have this unlikely trio, a teacher, an educational board, and a tech giant who were about to make history. In 1962, the team gets this grant for $96,000. Now, that might not sound like a ton, but back then, that was a huge amount of money. We're talking over $900,000 in today's money. It just shows you how powerful their vision was. In fact, the project ended up being so ambitious, the final cost almost doubled.
Okay, so they've got the team, they've got the money. What did they actually create? They created what was called the Sumerian Game. At its heart, it was an economic strategy simulation. But get this, it was entirely text-based. And its audience wasn't college students or researchers. It was for 4th to 6th graders, putting them in charge of an ancient city-state way back in 3500 BC.
The setup itself is just wild to think about. The game's brain, all the heavy processing, was happening on that massive IBM mainframe computer somewhere else. But the students? They were sitting in their classroom playing on a simple terminal, just getting text prompts and typing in their commands.
And don't let that simple text screen fool you. This thing was incredibly sophisticated for its time. We are talking about 15,000 lines of FORTRAN code. That is a massive and complex program for that era.
So we know how it was built. But what was it actually like to play it? I mean, how do you manage an entire civilization with just a keyboard? Well, the game was really smart about it. It unfolded in 3 stages. As the first ruler, Ludiga the First, you're just learning the ropes, balancing your grain supply with a growing population. Then, as Ludiga the Second, the game adds layers, like new technologies and trade. And finally, as Ludiga the Third, you're dealing with the really tricky stuff, like diplomacy and even military threats. And here's the magic. It wasn't just numbers on a screen. It used prose, this amazing narrative language, to pull you in. Getting a message like, "I humbly report," made a 10-year-old kid feel like a genuine ruler making huge decisions. It was really a blueprint for video game storytelling. So you have to remember, this wasn't just a game. It was a whole interactive lesson. They even supplemented it with physical slide presentations in the classroom, and this was a serious commitment. A single playthrough could take several hours. It was designed to be deeply engaging. So what happened to this incredible classroom experiment? Well, its legacy ended up laying the foundation for pretty much the entire world of strategy gaming that we have today. I mean, think about all the firsts here. The Sumerian Game was the first strategy video game, period. It was the first educational game to have an actual story. It was one of the earliest examples of trying to simulate a dynamic world. It really proved that games could make incredibly complex systems like an entire economy not only understandable, but also fun.
Now, while a few other text games did exist at the time, it was the Sumerian Game's specific focus on economic management that really inspired what came next. The most famous example was a game called Hamurabi, which became super popular on early computer systems and borrowed a lot of these core ideas. And that's really the key. The success of these text-based games proved that people absolutely loved this kind of strategic thinking. They showed there was a real hunger for it. And that laid all the conceptual groundwork that would fuel the graphical video game revolution that was waiting just around the corner.
So the next time you're building a massive empire or leading an army across a digital battlefield, just remember where it all really began. Not in a garage, not in a lab, but in a classroom, with a teacher's brilliant vision to bring ancient history to life.